live. This is our very first time hosting a guest Transformative Purpose live on YouTube, LinkedIn, and on Facebook. So if you are dialing in, a very warm welcome. On the screen, you see a couple of people. It's myself. My name is Aaron. I'm the founder of Transformative Purpose and also the podcast host for Catch Your Purpose. Joining us today, we also have Eric Byron. Eric is also a fellow podcaster, and he owns a podcast where he interviews inspiring education innovators, and I'll let him tell more about him to you later. And Eric has also worked in Walt Disney, and I'll do a brief introduction shortly. But I just want to welcome everyone to join our TP Live. There is a link in the comments, so if you have any questions, feel free to click into the link and you can type your questions and interact directly with Eric and myself. And we do this on a weekly basis, and we invite interesting guests such as Eric to come and share his wisdom and knowledge with the world. So without further ado, I'm just going to tell you a little bit more about what TP is. So TP is a personal growth platform and a positive community for entrepreneurs, corporate professionals, and writers to learn, grow, and explore new knowledge. And if this is your first time here, again, like I said, feel free to interact with guests. And for the last few weeks, we've been doing webinars with different guests. And like I said, it's our first time ever doing a TP Live. And Eric and I are very excited to see what comes out of it. So just a short introduction about my guest today, Eric. If you haven't met Eric before, Eric Byron is a tech advisor, a podcaster, and an ex-professional juggler. I'm not sure if I should use the X or still is. And his superpower is his ability to see the big picture and clear through the smoke and noise to get at root issues. He spent 6 years as a development director for Electronic Arts, EA Sports, but his real job was in entertainment at Walt Disney World in Florida, where he worked there for 11 years. And it was during his time there that Eric discovered his superpower. The topic of today is about agile leadership. And Eric is going to share with us how we can apply agile leadership at work and in life to enhance our performance and well-being. Eric, over to you to say hello to our guest today. I'm super excited to host this chat with you.
Yeah, well, I'm thrilled to be here. This is going to be really, really fun and a topic that I could talk endlessly about. I love talking about agile leadership. So great to be here. Thank you. So do you want me to jump right in, or you're
Yeah,
going to
yeah. Do
talk
you
some
want to?
more?
Yeah. I'd love to. I mean, a little while back we had a. So yeah, Eric actually appeared on my podcast before, Catch Your Purpose podcast. If you want to know more about Eric and one of the secrets that he actually discovered while he was working with his dad and his funeral home, you should definitely check out the conversation I've had with Eric. It was an emotional one too.
Yeah, it was. That was, yeah, that was fun. Um, it's good to share things like that, and
Yeah,
you do a good
yeah.
job on
So
your
Eric,
podcast.
hey Eric, so just to level up with the audience who might not have heard of agile leadership before, first of all, what is agile leadership, and where did you learn it?
Ooh, good question. So what is agile leadership? I define it as kind of a process of um, adapting and evolving, right? So as a person and as a leader, um, and I describe it as using all your senses, right? So agile leadership is really about gathering data and then kind of assessing that new information and then adapting, right? So that's really kind of the definition of agile. Or agile leadership. There's a lot more to it than that, but I'll give you that quick definition. Does that work?
Works for me.
Oh, and you wanted to know where I learned.
Yes.
So this is a lifetime, right? This is the, you know, the, the part of it, right? Being an agile leader is also that it's not a destination, right? It's a journey. This is something you constantly have to relearn and redo and kind of check yourself. Am I really being agile here, or am I kind of stuck in my ways and I have my perception of things and I'm afraid to change? So
Mm,
all my life, I've been
all your
learning
life.
this. So what else? You got
So
more
what else?
questions for me?
Yeah, well, I've got a lot of questions that I want to ask you. Depends on where we want to start here now. The juggling part. How did you pick that one up?
Juggling. All right. So yeah, of course, there's a story there. We love stories. I grew up in Massachusetts, and one of the things the family liked to do, we had a uh, big yard, big enough to have softball games, right? Baseball with a bigger ball, right? Softball, and and at one of these games we were hosting at the house, a bunch of people had come over. Some man there started juggling. I don't even remember who it was, but he juggled three softballs. I was, I think, 11 years old, and I was just fascinated. This was just cool that he could juggle three softballs. And so I learned. We had apple trees on the farm there, and I made a lot of applesauce, teaching myself to juggle three apples. And but anyway, I was hooked. I learned at 11, self-taught. I did my first show when I was 14, and at 17, I did my first paid performance, and kind of the next 30 years almost, I continued to perform um, as a juggler. Yeah.
What's the maximum number of balls that you can juggle at the same time?
Uh, in shows, I did have one trick with seven um, that I did. So yeah, seven objects. But I used to say, well, this is something I learned, right? And maybe this applies in some other context, but I learned that it's not about the numbers, because in kind of talking to people after I would do a show, and like I did this show, and I did this build up from 5 to 6 to 7 balls, and then I would ask people how many I juggled, and they had no idea, right? And I realized that people really can't comprehend the difficulty beyond four, right? When you go from 3 to 4, they have this sense that it's more difficult, but by the time you go to 5, 6, or 7, they can't comprehend anymore. There's almost no point. It's a self-fulfilling kind of thing to say, oh, I can juggle seven, but from an entertainment perspective, there's there's hardly any real value in it. Right? People
Mm,
don't understand; they can't comprehend it. So I actually focused much more of my performance stuff on three objects, 3 or 4, and trying to do more kind of fun, visually interesting things with a smaller number of objects, because it was more entertaining than than the spectacular, 7 ball thing that nobody can even comprehend how hard it is.
and you run a very successful and popular podcast, Eric. I was wondering if I could ask you, with all the ed tech leaders that you have interviewed and spoken to, and we live in such a vocal world, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Just to break down the acronym, what are you what insights what are you hearing from the education leaders in this field, and what have you learned? How many interviews have you done so far?
Oh, I've done over 50 episodes. I think I have about 35 of those are interviews. So, yeah, I've talked to a bunch of folks from all over the world too. That's been really a fun part of this, is getting perspectives from, Germany and Australia and all around Asia, of course, the U.S. I've had Canada, Mexico, um, say France. I don't know, all over the place. And generally speaking, there's so my show is kind of about optimism, right? It's not about complaining about things. It's about what can we do? What are we doing out there that really advances education, makes it more accessible? Um, I one of the things I talk about a lot is I believe education is the great equalizer, right? So in a world where there's a lot of frustration about, those that have and those that don't, and this gap seems to be growing, but we focus a lot on what we can do and what is being done out there, to make a good quality education available to everyone, to every child, and continuous education, right? That it's not just a period of going to school and we stop learning after that, right? We all know that education, learning is a lifelong journey.
Mm, mm, mm. And how can parents? Well, I have two children. But wait, what's your take on how parents should adapt in this new world? How should we parent at home?
Well, get involved. This is one of the things we talk a lot about also is adjusting beyond just academics and really looking at the holistic individual, their social and emotional skills. Now as we talk about the impact of technology, we really want to focus on critical thinking and problem solving, creativity, curiosity. Right? These are the things that really really matter in a world where AI can answer all the questions, right?
Yep.
Knowledge isn't nearly as important anymore, but the ability to think, the ability to, be in tune with your own, right? Why do I think this? You know, distinguishing truth from misinformation, right? These are the skills that our young people, the earlier they start to really develop those kind of skills, cognitive skills, the better off they're going to be.
Yeah. And how should we be using AI? Do you have any advice?
AI is a tool. It it does not replace the way we think or the way we write or the way we create, but it's a wonderful enhancement, right? I use it almost every day. Um, I don't use it as much to create my content as I do sometimes to help me clarify my own thoughts on something. So when I've got something I can't quite get the right words for it, or I know my explanation may not resonate with everybody, I'll throw it at AI and say, kind of explain this back to me, right? What's another way to say this? And sometimes that's just brilliant, right? It comes back and it gives me three different forms and says, oh, this one's kind of for a maybe a more intellectual kind of approach, and this one's a more social kind of approach to the topic, and sometimes that just gives me great kind of new perspective on how I might approach my own content that I create. So I think it's a wonderful tool used right, but it can also be used very badly as well.
And going back to agile leadership now, I was wondering if you could also share maybe what are some of the characteristics in terms of how you define agile leadership and how people can then apply agile leadership to what they're doing.
Okay, so I put together some notes. Do you want me to kind of go through my
Yeah,
thoughts there?
yeah, yeah, of course, yeah. And I'll shut up now.
All right, it's kind of a stream of consciousness. It's easier for me to
Sure.
go through it in a structured approach here. All right, so first of all, kind of the way this evolved for me. Right, I started out as like an agile coach working with software development teams, and so that was a process of kind of helping those teams be quicker, right? Rapid prototyping and themselves, right? Kind of constantly asking, reprioritizing, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? What might we do differently? What new information do we have now that we kind of put something out there and tested it with our users, right? So that's agile software development, and I used to coach those teams. The more I did that, the more I began to think about um, agile organizations, right? That it's not just about a project needs to be agile, but an organization needs to be agile. And, of course, the easy leap from there to saying, oh, well, I need to be agile as a leader in order to lead an agile organization. So that's kind of where the process went for me. And, um, and I really found that this resonates with people as they start to think about, what does an agile organization look like? What does an agile leader need to be? And so, again, a journey for me. I don't pretend to have all the answers. And in fact, it's one of the things I say about an agile leader. One of the very first things you'll recognize in an agile leader is that they will openly say, I don't have all the answers. I'm constantly seeking new information here, right? That's real agility, right? Is knowing that things are changing rapidly and I have to constantly reassess, right? What do I know? What don't I know that I should know or I need to know in order to make a decision? Okay. So I also get that, being an agile leader is not easy, right? Um, and it isn't just about like business decisions that we're trying to make, and I need to be agile and have more information to make business decisions. Agile leadership is really about people, right? So, and part of that is not imposing your style on people. Okay, so this is something I've seen a lot of leaders do, right? They have a particular style of leadership and they make their people adapt to them. And agile leadership kind of flips that, and they look at their people, they get to know their people, their strengths, their weaknesses, and they figure out what do they need from me, right? How do I adapt to them rather than force them to adapt to me, right? Because we can't be successful in a business unless our people are successful. We're really there to make them successful, to empower them. So this is, say, a continuous journey. There's quite a bit of overlap. I think a similarity when you hear people talk about servant leadership. The the distinguishment that I make there is I think that um, servant leadership is a little more kind of a framework of, do these things and you're a servant leader, whereas agile leadership to me is more dynamic. It's more of a journey and a continuous process of relearning how to be agile. So, all right, there isn't really a formula for this. I, honestly, I can't give you a checklist of these are the things you need to do and you'll be agile. But it is a mindset, and it is this recognition that I don't have the answers, that I am constantly evolving, getting better, relearning. What used to be true may not be true anymore, and I accept that, and I just have to adapt, right? It's also not necessarily about rapid decision making. Unlike the kind of project example in software development where you really want to rapidly prototype and adjust, agile leadership quite often is about recognizing that I don't have the information I need to make a decision, right? And I must go gather more information. So you defer important decisions until you have the right information to make that decision. So an agile leader is not reckless, despite what some might view when they think about, being agile is just running, at 100 miles an hour at something. And it definitely is not in my view of being an agile leader. All right, so a couple of things I just already covered there. um, so gathering data, right? We're constantly trying to gather data. This is a core tenet of being agile. I also used this phrase, I think, using all your senses. And I want to kind of re-talk about that a little bit, because for me, using all your senses doesn't mean just like being a good listener, right? It's I, I like the analogy of a cheetah, right? So if a cheetah is like the fastest land animal, right? They can run unbelievably fast. But what makes a cheetah a really good hunter is the fact that they can change directions really, really quickly. So, and they do this by using all their senses, right? They're smelling, they're feeling the ground beneath their feet. They're watching their prey, run ahead of them. They're looking at the environment, right? So sometimes you'll see a cheetah actually, instead of running at their prey, they will tack and go a different lane, right? Anticipating that their prey eventually is also going to have to turn, right? So they turn first, try and get into their path. So really, really intelligent, constantly assessing much information. And this is agility, right? It's having enough information to anticipate what may happen going forward. Um, Another point I made there early is it's about people, right? This is not just about business opportunity and you know being agile as a business. A true agile leadership is about people and paying attention to your people and what they need. Um,
Eric,
I
a
mentioned.
question just come.
Oh yeah.
A question just came through from Connie. Connie, how are you doing? Thanks for saying hi. And you just met Connie yesterday. So Connie's
Yes.
asking, so is agile leadership a leadership philosophy, or is it actually adopting agile principles in leading the teams? Like, we do stand up for meetings, product owners, we are product owners, we are backlog. How, what would you say to that?
So it's not so much about the practices there, right? The rituals, if you will, of agile software development. It's definitely not that. Um, it is more of a philosophy and a mindset than than yes a, a ritualistic approach.
Okay, thank you. Did
Okay.
that answer your question, Connie? Feel free to let us know if you have follow-up questions too.
Okay.
Okay, how do we know if we're agile? That's
So
a that's a tough question, eh?
yeah. Um, well, let me continue because I think there's some stuff that'll help answer that in the next part of my little talk I prepared here. So so again, going back to my kind of notes from the first part, right? So it's a journey, right? So never think you're there, right? You're constantly going to be doing this if you're really agile. Um, I mentioned defer decision making, right? So agile is definitely not about being reckless and knee jerk. Go 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 go. We're going to make decisions. You know, on the fly. It's definitely not that. That is not what agile leadership is about. So the next piece, though, it's really important. So you kind of ask, how do I know if I'm agile, right? So one of the things is you create a safe environment for your folks, right? So this means that people feel safe saying what needs to be said, right? They're not afraid of repercussions. They're not afraid to tell you that something went wrong or that they're afraid, right? That they see us moving in a direction that concerns them, right? People have to feel safe to give you this information, right? Your whole thing is you need information. If people won't talk to you, if they won't tell you the truth, right? Then you kind of already in a really bad spot, right? Your organization is almost doomed if people won't tell you the things you need to hear. Okay, so this is a conscious thing. You have to really think about this. How do I make people feel safe? Okay, this is not a oh, you just tell people, oh, you're safe. You can tell me whatever you want, right? You really have to prove over time that you want to hear the truth, that you're willing to hear the truth, that you're not going to punish people for telling you the truth when it's inconvenient truth, right? So this is something you have to work on. You have to earn that trust, build that trust with people so they feel safe. Okay. Um, Another concept I talk about with agile leaders is a focus on value. So um, what this means to me is that it's not just about making sure everybody's busy, right? It's almost that difference, if you will, between leadership and management, right? When you manage somebody, you just want to make sure they're busy and they're productive, but they could very well be doing busy work that doesn't really add value. So an agile leader is very concerned about this, right? They want their people to be contributing value to the organization, which means that they're moving you forward towards um, a shared vision, right? An outcome that is important, right? So they know that the work they're doing is important, and this again, all of this takes effort. You really have to spend some time and dig in and look at what are people doing, not in a micromanagement way, but again, asking those questions. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? Why are you doing that today versus something else today, right? And we see a lot of organizations. I see this all the time. People seem to be just frantic. They're running around crazy. Everybody's working hard. Or what you're measuring is right. I've seen this type of leader or manager, right, where I'm measuring how many hours people are working, or how many tasks they got done, how many deadlines did they hit, right, versus really measuring the value and the outcome and um, what what did we achieve as an organization, not as a list of tasks that somebody had to perform. Okay, so I think this is really really important. I see way often. Well, there was a phrase I heard somewhere. I think it was, you make important what you measure, right? So if you're measuring how many hours somebody works or what time they come through the door in the morning, right, to work, you're making that important versus an outcome that really adds value. So be careful what you measure. You make it important. Um, Agility is also efficient, right? It's lean. It eliminates waste, right? So we see this on the software development side, but this is one place where it really does cross over into agile leadership, right? You don't want your people doing busy work for the sake of doing busy work, producing reports that nobody really cares about, that aren't going to drive important decisions, right? So you want to be lean and efficient and say focused on value. Um, Part of what that does also, so importance, to me also connotates a sense of purpose, right? Of course, we love that with TP, but so it is really really important, and this is part of just being a leader, right? And having that vision that folks can understand what we're doing and why we're doing it, where the value is, and that they can relate to it, right? That they have a connectedness to this purpose and they understand the value that their work adds, right? So I love, I know you're familiar with it, Aaron, but Daniel Pink's book Drive, where he makes this or he distinguishes between intrinsic motivators and external motivators, and of course, purpose is one of those. But the other two are autonomy and mastery, and I think that an agile leader also gets this right. This is part of their observation of their people and what you're doing and how you're doing it or why you're doing it, right? So autonomy is um, that kind of control I have to do what needs to be done in a way that allows me to make some decisions. So it's one thing for us to say, okay, today we got to go do this thing. This adds value. This is important. And then I don't micromanage you. I let you make decisions about how you're going to do that. So we've agreed it needs to be done. It's important, but you get to decide how to do it. Okay. This is an intrinsic motivator for people. They like to have that sense of control and the ability to make kind of decisions for themselves and decide sometimes what they're going to do, but almost all the time they get to decide how they're going to do it. Now, sometimes there's standards and compliance issues and stuff. I'm not saying that doesn't exist. I'm saying give your people as much freedom to make decisions and determine how they're going to work as you can, right? Autonomy matters in terms of motivation. Mastery is another really, really important one there. People need to have a sense that they're growing, they're developing, they're learning new things. You're giving them that opportunity to advance their own skill sets and develop and learn. Right? We all want to learn. An agile leader, continuous learning process, but your people also need to be learning, which also means they need to be challenged. Right? So you need to give them stuff that's hard to do, stuff that pushes them a little bit. Okay, so all of this requires you kind of paying attention to who are your people. Again, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, and can I give them an assignment that they really can sink their teeth into and learn something from, right? When our people develop and they get stronger, the organization is stronger, and a stronger organization can pivot more quickly, right? So that's all part of wanting to be agile is you want your people to have the skills, the resilience, the confidence to be able to change direction quickly and not get all rattled and freaked out when the organization moves, which an agile organization will. right? And then, of course, purpose, going back to kind of having that shared vision and people understand what they're doing, which doesn't necessarily mean, right, that you're a social enterprise or a nonprofit or a charity or whatever. Any business can have a great vision that people connect to. You mentioned I worked at Disney for all those years, right? We understood what we were doing and the impact that it had on people and all these families and the kids hugging Mickey Mouse, right, in the parks. You got it. You had this sense for the importance of that and what people were getting from the product that you were delivering there. And then EA, right? We were making video games, and you got it, right? This was entertainment, but people were really, really into it, and they wanted those games, and they wanted them to be right, and they didn't want them to be buggy, and so people were motivated. They had that sense of purpose, vision for what a great game would look like when we delivered it to the customers. So, okay, so autonomy, mastery, and purpose, intrinsic motivators. You want to pay attention to these things as an agile leader. Another piece is, I kind of alluded to this already, right? Embracing change. Okay, we may need to pivot. We may need to make big changes to what we're doing. So you have this kind of willingness as an agile leader to take calculated risks, right? You have to go try things, and you have to learn from failure, right? This is part of the process. Failure is a learning opportunity. And so an agile leader always looking at it that way, right? That we have to try new things. We have to push the envelope a little bit. And this goes back to that safe environment, right? Where we've said we've created an environment where people can speak up. We also have to create an environment where people are okay taking some risk and failing, and then acknowledging, I tried something and it didn't work out, right? And they don't feel punished for that. They don't feel publicly humiliated for admitting that they failed on something. This is, almost rewarded, right? You took a little risk and you learned something from it. What did we learn? What do we do now? How do we adjust to that? In the video game industry, they had a phrase called fail fast, fail cheap, right? So this was exactly that kind of principle. Go, try something. If it doesn't work, good. We didn't invest a lot in it. We found out as quickly as possible that it isn't going to work, and that's rewarded, right? We want to find those things that aren't going to work and eliminate them so we don't waste time and energy on them.
Yeah, Eric, got a couple of
Yeah.
questions. I've actually been typing up a lot of those while you're speaking, and
Okay.
actually got a bunch of questions that I wanted to ask you. But if I wait till the end of our conversation, I believe that it might take another hour to wrap up this
Okay.
conversation.
Yeah.
On on,
Jump in.
on this note about empowering, so you talk about the three elements of motivation, which are using your term is autonomy, mastery, purpose. And funny enough, about a week ago, I wrote I wrote a post about this, and the acronyms that I use is CAR. So CAR, C stands for competence, which is your mastery. A stands for autonomy, which is exactly the same, and R stands for relatedness. I didn't come up with this. Two
Okay.
psychologists came up with the determination theory, and those are the three elements that people need to motivate themselves, or we need to empower other people, our teams, to be able to do what they love, right?
Yep.
So the question that what I want to ask you is, you talked about building a culture whereby people feel safe and they can take risks. I've got two questions for you. In the modern world, where a lot of companies are still running on meritocracy, where we do end of the year bonus, we praise people on their achievements, the numbers that they bring in. How do we tackle that? Number one. So that's my first question. My second question is, in a big organization, how do we balance between letting people to take reasonable risks and safeguarding the interests of the company? So I've got two questions for you.
Okay. So the first one, again, really goes back to this kind of, measure, or you make important what you measure, right? So as an organization, and you're going to do that year-end review kind of thing, right? This is where, I think you really have to be careful, that you're not measuring output versus outcome, right? And my classic example of measuring output versus outcome is um, in football, right? So there are goals, there's shots on goals, right? There's a whole slew of metrics that you could measure about a game, right? But they're all output, right? The number of goals I scored don't matter necessarily if the outcome was I lost, right?
Mm.
So I'm not
Hmm.
necessarily going to reward you because you scored a goal if the team lost, right? So the outcome is the win. Okay, so when we measure our employees' performance, right, it doesn't matter if they did everything we told them to do, but the organization wasn't profitable or the organization didn't hit some major goal that they had, right, for the organization. And that shouldn't be, again, just about sales numbers. So many companies, right, just they got to quantify everything and it's all about the numbers, all about the money. But to me, right, agile leadership is also about that strength of the organization, right? How many great people did we hire this year? How many people did we develop this year? How many people did we promote this year, right? How's our, you know, what do we know about our turnover? When people left, did they leave because they were trying to get away, or did they leave because there was a better opportunity somewhere, right? If there was a better opportunity for them, I'm happy for you. Go blossom in the world, right? That's a good thing if people are developing skills that also make them marketable. Um,
To
you know
add
that,
to your point, when I was working at Hay Group, we've done years and years of research and over many decades. The number one reason why people leave their job is not because of money. The number
yeah,
one reason why people quit their job is because of their manager. But they just wouldn't
exactly.
tell you. They wouldn't tell you the brutal truth in their exit interview because they don't feel safe.
Yep. Well, safety. Exactly.
Yeah.
This is so key in. Um, well, I had a story from EA, a game team who I won't specifics here, but there was a team that was working on a product, and half the team knew. I mean, they were effed. I mean, this was not going to work. They were trying all kinds of new technology. They had all these risks, and the team knew this is never going to happen. We're never going to be able to deliver this game. But management created an environment where the people were afraid to speak up and say the truth, and stand up in a meeting and say, this isn't going to work. And they wasted 6 months building stuff, and then finally had to have this moment of recognition that they had just spent 6 months and $1 million or whatever building something on a technology that couldn't handle what they were trying to do, and they had to completely reset the whole project, and it was a huge embarrassment to the studio. um, and the whole problem was people didn't feel safe. That there was this momentum. Oh, we're going. This is going to be great. And there was all this PR and talk about how incredible this game was going to be that they were building. And the team knew it's a wish, it's a fantasy. We're never going to pull it off. But nobody wanted to raise their hand and say this isn't going to work. So
Mm.
yes, you can.
So,
It can cost the business a lot when.
mm.
Fortunately, EA was big enough to survive, a write-off like that. But many game companies, smaller game companies, they can't. You spend 6 months on something and then realize you can't pull it off. Um, you close the doors and everybody goes home.
That's interesting. Listening to your narrative just kind of painted a picture in my head. It's kind of like you've got a team of people traveling on a boat, and some of your team members, some of your crew members realize that they're actually holes. That your boat is actually leaking water,
Yes, and they don't
and
tell you.
they were so
Yeah,
scared they don't tell the captain because they don't have that, they don't feel that safety to tell the captain, and then
right. He's
eventually
afraid he's going
you
to
guys all sing
blame them
together.
for making the holes. Right, right, exactly. So yes, this takes skill and practice and observation and building trust with people, right, to get them to admit, yes, the boat's leaking.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
taking
No, I
on
love
water. Yeah.
yeah, I love everything you said about getting data points as feedback loop, and as a tool to help us try more things and then also, but be able to use that data to interpret data to actually to use them to tell us that okay, maybe it's time to change direction to pivot. I want to ask you a follow up question. How do we like at work if we talk about the context of work or the context of life, because we talked about being feeling comfortable with the uncomfortable basically.
Yeah.
How do we, like, as an individual, as a professional, how do we get data points about, confirming the direction that we're going at work and in life? What sort of data points would you be looking for?
Well, I mean, there's so many different aspects of things, but um, I'm trying to think of a specific example of where you're collecting data. So, well, go back to the game development thing because this is what I'm probably most familiar with in terms of like projects, right? So one of the things we always said was, um, as soon as possible, you need something that people can touch and play with, right? So you need that prototype that um, that somebody can give you feedback on. Then, right, it's an emotional detachment that you just have to have the resilience to listen to that feedback, right? Because sometimes you're all excited about something I'm developing, right? And I've spent 3 months developing a working prototype, and now the first people who see it go, I don't get it. Right? Nah, I don't like that. I don't want to play with that, right? Or that's not fun. And so, the uh, the temptation there is to ignore that, right? And say, oh, they just didn't get it, right? I need to work harder on it, right? So the next round they'll get it, right? And I spend another 3 months, excuse me, and then eventually you realize that no, the feedback's been real. This is something I imagined was going to be fun, but there's really no market for it, and that's the danger, right? So you need to constantly, and again, it's that focus on value, right? It isn't value as a business unless somebody's willing to pay for it, right? So you've got to, as quickly as possible, have that data, right? You've got to connect with your customer, right? What is it I'm doing, and would somebody pay for it?
Mm. Yeah, getting that validation is so important, and knowing whether. So I talked about 3 Ps. You came to our workshop. We talked about resilience, and I think what you just shared sort of prompted what we talked about at this resilience workshops. I believe there are 3 Ps to resilience. Hopefully, I remember what those 3 Ps stand for. So I think the first one is about perseverance. You confirm the direction and you kind of hit a paddle and you just kind of hit go. But as you accumulate more and more data points, sometimes you might be heading a wrong direction, or you might want to explore whether there are different paths. And the data will inform you whether you need to pivot the second P. Now, if you master the first P, the perseverance and the pivoting moment, then what you're basically doing is you're preserving your energy, right? Imagine like we are like a battery bank, like you said,
Yep.
and we don't want to waste our energy going after the wrong outcome.
Yep.
And another interesting question for you, Eric. Now, it's all good and great that if we can embrace this agile, I would say self leadership. Let's say we want to become a better self leader. We can embrace this agility mindset. What if we are working with somebody? What if we're working with a manager who is not agile or who doesn't embrace this, and we don't feel safe to feedback to our manager? What can we do?
Boy, it's yeah, this is a hard one to kind of push upwards in an organization from
I
below.
only ask you tough questions, Eric.
So I would say to people, be the best version of yourself, but also recognize that if you're in a situation that isn't comfortable for you, you don't feel safe, right? You don't have that sense of purpose. You don't have autonomy, mastery, right? You're not, you know, getting what you need. Leave. At some point, you can't bang your head against a wall. Just make a decision yourself. Be agile yourself and say, okay, I've been collecting this data. I understand now I'm kind of hitting a wall. Let's pivot, which may mean getting another job. Now, I always advise people though, find the other job before you quit. Don't let yourself get so frustrated that you do the rage thing and storm out of somebody's office and now your stress level is off the charts and you're much more likely to make a bad decision on your next job and put yourself back in a situation where you've just repeated the cycle and you're now working for somebody else who's a bad manager and you know hostile work environment or something.
Mm, mm. Wonderful. Look, I've got a page long of notes that I've that I've actually typed up while you're speaking, and there's there's a lot of wisdom that you share today around. I've spent close to 20 years in the digital and business industry, and so did you. So agile to me, agility is actually in my blood. I would say agility is part of my DNA. I'm not a fan of change, and to be honest, I've had many, and you know many of my uncomfortable moments where I just had to embrace change because there was no other option.
Yeah.
And it is a cliche to say that change is the only constant in life, and it is. And more so in today's world where things are changing so fast. What worked yesterday might not work today or might not work
Mm.
tomorrow. And what I actually got from your sharing today is I feel like what you're also saying is, sorry, I'm putting words in your mouth. I feel like the agile leadership piece is actually a way of living. It's a way of empowering ourselves to be comfortable with not having answers. It's it's a way to empower and to say that it is okay to fail and people will judge, but we have a very strong anchor around what we believe in, our purpose, how we want to relate to ourselves, and how we want to relate to other people, and show up and ask for support if your boat is sinking, and if the environment is not empowering you to live the way that you want to live, then maybe consider a change, like you said. But at the same time, consider your runway. Don't watch too many TV shows and just slam the door and quit your job. That's never a wise thing. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah.
So the other comment I want to make too about being agile, and I think Connie put another message up there about how do you know if you're agile. So one of my um, pieces on that is you're curious. You're always curious, right? You're looking for that thing. You know, I don't know because I don't know, right? Um, and so, again, always assuming there's a whole other perspective on this. There's a whole bunch of information I don't know yet. And so I'm curious. I'm seeking, right, new information all the time. And, and not afraid, right, to find something that contradicts what I want to believe is true. That's maybe the hardest part. All right, another complex question. About leading without titles, adopting teal
So let
organization
me read all the
structure.
questions here.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
from Connie, so people talked about leading without titles and adopting teal organization structure, holocracy. Actually, I actually need you to explain that. So how do you see the role of agile leadership in moving people into a structureless structure in the near future?
Yeah. No, it's a good question. I don't really talk so much about agile in terms of like organizational structure that much. Although I am kind of a proponent for um, less structure. um, and I don't like the whole titles thing. I used to tell people, right, don't ever treat me like the boss. I may be, your director or whatever my title is, but I'm just another person on the team and I have a job to do. And my job is really to make you successful. So you got to tell me what you need, right? Don't do something just because I told you to do it, right? And I'm the boss. That's not how this works, right? You gotta treat me just like anybody else on the team. I'm trying to get things done. I'm trying to move things forward. I'm trying to knock down any barricades or speed bumps in your path, right? So you got to tell me what those are, what you need, and then I will go fight for you. And this is so that's kind of part of that attitude. Right? That's kind of the servant leadership side of it, right? Where we're saying, yeah, I'm here to serve you, not you serve me as the boss. And so yeah, titles don't really matter. It's a role. It's something I do, and hopefully, if I'm an agile leader, I am kind of uniquely equipped to do this, right? You have
Mm.
your expertise and um, your contribution, the way you add value as an individual is different than other people on the team. And so, value what I do, I value what you do, and, the titles don't matter so much.
Mm. I learned a
Hope
new
that
term
answers
today.
it.
I've actually haven't heard of holacracy before. So just for the listeners, just to clarify this term. So holacracy is a method of decentralized management and organizational governance. A couple of things came to mind with from the question that Connie just posted and from your sharing, Eric. Um, I just remember one of the things that Simon Sinek said in one of his talks around sort of empowering people and leadership being a title. And I remember him saying something very profound, like leadership uh, or being called a leader is not an entitlement. It's actually a responsibility where you have people to look after. So you like listening to you and the question kind of prompted me with what Simon said in one of his talks. The second thing that prompted me in my head was one of the things that Jensen, the CEO of NVIDIA, said in one of his media interviews too. So apparently, Jensen doesn't do one-on-one. He doesn't do much one-on-one conversations. So when he has something important to say, he doesn't believe in structure, doesn't believe in hierarchy, and he says it to everyone. So if he's doing a town hall, if he has feedback for one of his direct reports, he would just do it in a social setting where everyone gets the same message. So I don't know if these two
Hmm.
provide more context to your questions, Connie, but if love to hear your thoughts as to what Eric and I've shared in related to your question too. Anything else you want to add, Eric? We got
So,
we're four
well, I'll just
minutes.
comment on that last bit. So I kind of go with the opposite philosophy. In fact, if you've ever heard of the 1 minute manager, right?
Mm,
I read this many, many, many years ago, and managing by walking around. And this is something I used to do too. I put this into practice where I tried to really minimize group meetings. So if there was something I wanted to get out to people, I would walk around and spend 5 minutes with each of them as a conversation, right? And part of my philosophy there was, I'm looking you in the eye. I want to see your reaction to this, right? I want you to have an opportunity, not intimidated by a group setting, but I want you to tell me, how does this make you feel? What's your reaction to this? And by giving people that opportunity, and it's only a 5 minute disruption to their day as opposed to being dragged into a 30-minute meeting, right? That's more disruptive. And I negotiated that, right? I would kind of be wandering around, and people knew, oh, Eric wants to talk to me, and I can let him know, right, when I'm clear. I've got 5 minutes now. You without really disrupting my workflow, you can talk to me. And so, yeah, it might take me a day to get everybody, um, but anyway, it disrupted them less and gave them that opportunity to really communicate with me about how they feel about something. Now, if it's a big announcement, it's a really big shared thing, major pivot going on. Yeah, you're going to have a group meeting. You want to have people be able to discuss and provide feedback and openly debate, or maybe even contribute to a decision, right? Instead of announcing a decision is made, you call a meeting, you have everybody together, and you go, here's what I'm kind of thinking. I'm seeing data that says we should go do this instead of doing what we've been doing. What do you guys think? That's agile leadership, right? Bringing people
right.
into. You still got to make the decision at the end of the day, but people feel like they've had input and they were listened to. Yeah.
Mm. Kind of like what we're doing today, and what I always do to you, Eric. So whenever I have questions, I ping you and I ping Connie. And as I said at the start of the conversation today, for the last 4 weeks we've been doing webinars on Zoom, and today we're doing the live for the first time just to get data and see,
Yeah.
how we can make this more impactful and trying more things, trying different things, getting data points, but at the same time, um, not letting our ego tell us that it's not okay to fail. Um,
I fail every day. Something. Yeah. It's a way of life for me. Yeah.
yeah. Well, failing is progressive. I rather,
Yeah.
yeah, like if I look at my past life, I have learned nothing from achievements and success. But every time I fail, every time that I had setback, they taught me a very valuable life lesson, something that I will carry forward for the rest of my life. So I
Yep.
think we should celebrate failures more, like you said, and love everything you said about getting data points and in an organization and also in our own life to make sure that we are journeying on the path that we've dreamt of all our life. Eric,
Yeah.
any last inspiring words from you before we close off?
No, I was just going to say, if anybody wants to talk about this stuff, I have mentored many young entrepreneurs and startup founders, particularly in the ed tech space, these days. But yeah, if there's people who want to reach out, find me on LinkedIn. We can, post the link there, I guess. That's a good place to start. Or they can look for me on my YouTube channel, right? I've got the YouTube
Education
channel with the
Innovators
podcast.
podcast.
Right, the Education Innovators podcast. And so, yeah, and my email, I think, is in the show notes there every time. So you can email me if you want. But yeah, reach out. I'd love to talk about this stuff, and I I hope I can help some people be more agile.
You've been very helpful today. All right, before we close off, for those who have joined us today, thank you so much for spending an hour of your time listening to Eric and myself. So, we are from Transformative Purpose, a personal growth platform for entrepreneurs, corporate professionals, and writers to learn, grow, and evolve together. We have other free growth resources in the public domain, including a podcast called Catch Your Purpose. It used to be called Transformative Purpose, but I realized that a lot of people have issues spelling transformative purpose. We've recently rebranded it to Catch Your Purpose podcast. You'll find both English and Chinese interviews that we've done with inspiring business executives, professional athletes, and thought leaders from all around the world. We also have a newsletter, and from time to time, we run different summits, workshops, networking sessions, and talks, both in person and online, which you can check out. And we also have the Purpose Club, which you can also join and collaborate with a close group of people who are interested in personal growth, career growth, and business growth. Again, thank you so
I'm
much
member
for joining
number
the call
one,
today.
right?
Yeah.
I'm member number one of the Purpose Club.
Yes,
Please
Eric
join
Byron is
us.
actually, yeah, our member number one, our very first founding member of the Purpose Club. So if you are interested, please check it out. So yeah, thank you so much. That an hour just went through like a blink of an eye,
Yeah.
and my intention is to do this weekly. And if you find this useful, please come back and also help us share the word. And our vision is to build a more positive world so everyone can evolve together in the new
Yes.
world. Cool. All right, Eric, thank you so much. I
Been
hope you have a
fun.
beautiful weekend, and it was
Yes.
fun.
You
And
too.
thank you so much
Happy
for spending time
Friday.
with me this morning. Happy Friday to you too.
All right.
All
Bye.
right, see you, buddy. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Connie. Bye, everyone.